Well, hello everybody. It is my pleasure to welcome you here today as Nassau County rallies with Governor Cuomo to protect the rights of women. Before we begin, I would like to introduce some special guests that we have with us today. District Attorney of Nassau, Madeline Singas. County Legislator Ellen Birnbaum. And dressed appropriately in pink, North Hempstead Supervisor Judy Bosworth. We also have Joanne Smith, who is President and CEO of Nassau County Planned Parenthood. And we will hear from Joanne shortly. We also have two council members from the town of North Hempstead, Anna Kaplan and the always glamorous Lee Seaman. Town of North Hempstead Clerk Wayne Wink. We also have Town of Hempstead Clerk Sylvia Cabana. And I'm very happy to see Rebecca Sannon here. She's President and CEO of the Health and Welfare Council of Long Island. And someone I'm seeing a lot of these days, Maddie Arasich, President of the Nassau-Suffolk Building Trades Council. Thank you for being here. I want to give a special thanks to Teamsters Local 282 under the leadership of Tom Giswaldi. I know some of you are here. Say hello. Thank you. They're our hosts for today, and a huge thanks to all of our community leaders, other elected officials, and brothers and sisters in labor. So today, before we hear from Joanne, we're going to hear from the governor, but we'll get to that in a minute. Under the Trump administration, the rights of women in this country are under threat like never before. And now they have a chance to add a Supreme Court justice who could actually roll back Roe v. Wade. The stakes are that high. That's why it's so important that in New York we have leaders like Governor Cuomo standing up for our values. Under the governor's leadership, we are not only protecting the progress we've made so far, but we are taking new, bold action to strengthen reproductive rights in this state, where we do have some control. In Nassau County, we are so proud to stand with Governor Cuomo and our partners across the state to fight back. Please join me now in welcoming a true leader in this fight, someone who has been in the trenches for years, Joanne Smith.
Good morning. Can you all hear me? I am so thrilled to be here and to have this amazing honor to introduce our governor. I'm going to throw my remarks away because I can just talk about this forever. I think today and these times, as Laura said, these are the worst of times and the best of times. The worst because, as never before, all of our freedoms are under attack. Every single freedom that we hold dear. Every single one. But thank God we live in New York State. And thank God we have thank God we live in New York State. I see every day the benefit of living in New York State. Most of you don't know that Planned Parenthood has a prenatal program. And do you know why? It's because and it provides free prenatal care to women who have no insurance. Do you know why? The state, Governor Cuomo. Do you know? Yes. We have a family planning benefit program. Again, it's a statewide program that was implemented in this state to provide free birth control to people who live here. That is a huge benefit. In addition, we receive funding from the state to provide free or low-cost family planning services to those who have no insurance. And that's because of Governor Cuomo. The women's rights movement started in New York State back in a long time ago, 1848, a very long time ago. And New York has been a beacon of reproductive freedom and all freedoms forever. And we need to continue to ensure that New York remains that beacon of freedom for people who live here and for those who do not. So I am very, very proud to stand with you today and introduce our governor, who has done so much for all the rights that we hold dear, whether it's immigration rights or freedom of the press or gay rights or any of the rights that make us a civilized state and a civilized country. Planned Parenthood of Nassau County stands with the governor as he stands with us, and I'm thrilled to introduce him today.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's hear it for Joanne Smith. And let's hear it for Planned Parenthood. Let's give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. First, your county executive is doing a fantastic job. It's always a pleasure to partner with her, and her leadership has been a breath of fresh air. Laura Curran. Let's give her a round of applause. Your district attorney is a statewide star, Madeline Singas. Pleasure to be with you. Judy Bosworth, all the local elected officials, pleasure to be with all of you. As Joanne said, these are really frightening times. And we need Planned Parenthood today more than we ever have before. It's a totally new reality. You know, every day this federal government does something that is shocking to our senses. It's almost like Groundhog Day. You think it can't get any worse, and then the next day it's a repeat where it's a real shock to a system. Why? Because everything they're doing is repugnant to who we are and what we believe. And I'm just amazed at what they have been doing, and I've been amazed since this president took office. I was watching the Talking Heads last night on TV after the Supreme Court nominee was announced. Not my brother's show. That's not a Talking Head show. That's a deep intellectual exercise. But one of the other shows, and one of the conservative commentators who was sort of boastful and arrogant about the nomination said, you know, well, elections have consequences. And this nation elected President Trump, who is a pro-life president, and he said we're going to have a pro-life court. And it sort of dawned on me that these are not a series of unrelated items. There has been a basic shift in the politics and the values of this country. We elected an extreme conservative president. We empowered an extreme conservative Congress, and they are enacting an extreme conservative agenda. It's shocking to us in New York because we are the exact opposite. We're night and day from who they are and what they believe. So we're continually in a state of shock, but they are doing what they said they were going to do. And elections have consequences. And it is a wake-up call to all of us. My daughters, you know, if you're 21, 22, 23, young women, you never even questioned your reproductive rights. You grew up in a generation where you just assumed, Roe v. Wade was 1973. 1973. Generations just grew up assuming this is the way it was. Couldn't even imagine that a woman wouldn't have the right to control her own body. That's what they are saying. And they are serious. And it's not just politics, and this isn't just a game. They are doing it. They're doing what they said they would do, and it's all across the board. Joanne's exactly right. They have their own view of what religions are right, and what lifestyles are right, and what sexuality is right, and who should be an American and who shouldn't be an American, and they are going to enforce that. It's the greatest act of political hypocrisy, because conservatives used to stand for limited government, right? Less federal government. Leave it to the states. Leave it to the individual rights. That's why they are extreme conservatives, because they take their conservative views and they want to impose it on the country. The Supreme Court is especially frightening because it's basically unfettered presidential power. When the president has to pass a law, he has to go through that body called the Congress. And you have to debate and you have to argue, and they control both houses, but it's still a process. Supreme Court is the president nominates, his Senate confirms, and then they interpret the law, but you can interpret the law to change the law. And this is a pro-life president. And he said repeatedly, I'm going to nominate pro-life judges. You're now going to see over the next few weeks, they're going to play out, well, prove that Kavanaugh is going to overturn Roe v. Wade. Show me where he said that. That's going to be the subject of the hearings. I'll tell you my first witness. My first witness is President Trump, who said repeatedly, I'm going to only nominate pro-life judges, and that's exactly what he has done, and exactly what he will do. And make no mistake, this is not a game. They are on track to overturn Roe v. Wade. That's what they want to do. That's what they wanted to do since it was passed in 1973. And it is a shock to the system. How could we possibly go back to those days? Who even remembers what it was like before? When a woman couldn't have an abortion? How many women lost their lives? Were damaged because of what they had to do in that situation? And that is what we are looking at. They are pro-life. They also have their view of sexuality. And they don't agree with the LGBTQ community, and that's why they treat them as second-class citizens. Wanted to kick transgender out of the military regardless of service, regardless of merits. They believe who should be an immigrant and who shouldn't be an immigrant. A little hypocritical, since we're all immigrants, but they now decided they're going to close the door. The separation of family policy, this is not a coincidence. They knew exactly what they were doing. They wanted to stop people at the border. The first point was build a wall. I'm going to build a big wall, nobody can come. The president didn't get a wall. So he went to the zero tolerance policy. And now what he's saying to families is, if you show up, I'm going to take your children from you and send them to a place where you don't even know where they are. He knew exactly what he was doing. It was a deterrent to stop people from coming when he couldn't get the wall. He then took political heat for the separation of the children, signed an executive order and said, okay, we'll reunite the children in the family detention centers at the border. When he signed that executive order, he knew darn well that it was illegal. You can't put children in a detention center. It's the federal law that's existing. Federal judge yesterday ruled You can't put those kids with their parents in the detention center. Now they're trying to reunite the children. They can't even find them. It's like a parental nightmare. Well, it was an accident. It was no accident. It was a deterrent. They're going to tell you what religion is right. They don't believe that Muslims are an appropriate religion, and that's the travel ban. They don't agree with labor unions. Thank God for the Teamsters. They don't want labor unions. They just passed the Janus decision with the Supreme Court because they don't want these annoying unions being able to organize employees, making it harder for management to negotiate with the workforce. It's who they are and what they said they were going to do. And it is a frightening reality. We believe the opposite, and it's incumbent on us to act. To act. We're not going to let them change our values. We're not going to let them change our philosophy. We're not going to let them change the way we treat one another. We're not going to let them change our tolerance to intolerance. We're not going to allow them to divide us. They're not going to pick who has the right lifestyle and who has the right religion and who has the right sexuality and who has the right income level to deserve respect. We're not going to let them do that. Federal government has rights, but you know what there was before the federal government? There were state governments, and there are states' rights, and states have the ability to stand up and act. And when they wouldn't do anything in the face of the Me Too movement, this state stood up and said, we're going to pass the strongest anti-sexual harassment law in the United States of America. When they separated families at the border, this state stood up and said, that's unconstitutional, it's illegal, it violates due process, and we're suing the federal government to put those families back together and to stop the separation. And we have to do the same thing on the issue of choice. They are going to overturn Roe v. Wade. We need a New York state law that codifies Roe v. Wade into the New York state law. And we need that law in place before they overturn Roe v. Wade in the Supreme Court. Now, we've been trying to get the New York State Legislature, the Senate, to pass a New York State Roe v. Wade. That's all the law would say. Take the federal ruling in Roe v. Wade, 1973, and enact it into a state law. Currently, the New York state law is not as strong as Roe v. Wade because we had Roe v. Wade. And I've been arguing with the Republicans in the Senate, frankly, why don't we codify it into the New York state law? And the Republican senators have been saying to me, well, we have Roe v. Wade. We don't need it. No one would be crazy enough to overturn Roe v. Wade. That's the answer Joanne has been getting for years when Planned Parenthood would lobby for a New York state law. We don't need it. We have Roe v. Wade. Well, you know what? Now we need it. Now we need it. And I want the New York state senators to come back today, tomorrow, to go to Albany and pass a New York state Roe v. Wade, period. And no excuses. No excuses. For years, they've been doing this dance, the Republican senators. Privately, they say, oh, I'm pro-choice. I'm pro-choice. When the bill comes up, I'm going to vote pro-choice. Joanne will tell you. But then they never let the bill come up. We tried to force a vote this legislative session. They won't put the bill on the floor. Why? It's a little game they play. It allows them to say privately, oh, when the bill comes up, I'll vote yes. But the bill never comes up. So they can tell one audience, yes, I'm pro-choice. Then they can go to another audience and say, we'll never pass choice in the state of New York. We have to call the question. This is binary. This is black and white. You are either pro-choice or you are not pro-choice. And we don't have Roe v. Wade anymore to fall back on. It's only what we have in New York state law. And the New York state law does not go as far as Roe v. Wade. And if we have only the New York state law, we're in trouble. It does not do life and health. It is in the criminal code. We will have a problem. We need that law. We have to call the question. And we have to say to the Republican senators who have been having it both ways for too long, that's over. You are with us or you are against us. And if you are with us, don't just tell me. Go up to Albany and pass a bill. That's how I know that you are with the women and the men of this state who support choice. That's what it has to be. In the meantime, I'm going to sign an executive order that guarantees the women in this state the right to contraception. I don't care what an insurance company says, what a bureaucracy says. Women have a right to contraception. But we have to learn the lesson, my friends. Elections have consequences. Elections have consequences. And this is a wake-up call. If what they did on immigration and unions and what they did to Muslims wasn't enough, this is an attack on every woman's rights to control her own reproductive health in the United States of America. This is a direct attack on what we knew in 1970. When you're talking to our friends, the Republican senators, remind them, in 1970, before Roe v. Wade, which was 1973, this state legalized abortion. 1970, with a Republican Senate and a Republican governor, because we understood it wasn't a partisan issue. It was a fairness issue. It was a health issue. It was an equality issue. It was a woman being able to control her own body issue. We did it in 1970. Don't tell me in 2018 the Republican Senate is going to go backwards from 1970. We have to call the question. Elections have consequences, and this is binary. They're with us, they're against us. And if they don't come back, and if they don't codify Roe v. Wade, you know what we're going to say, in the immortal words of President Trump, to the senators who won't come back and sign a bill? You're fired. We're protecting the women in the state of New York. Women's rights come first. Let's sign the state executive order. Thank you, and God bless you.
Five. I just need five.
Congratulations, the order is signed.